Hello, I'm Caitlin McDermott, and today I'm sitting with Mr. Tony Robinson. Mr. Robinson is the FEMA Region 6 Regional Administrator for Hurricane Harvey. And today we're going to be having a discussion about the ongoing Hurricane Harvey recovery efforts. Mr. Robinson, I appreciate your time today.
Thanks for being here, Caitlin.
Absolutely. So it's been about 4.5 months since Texas experienced a disaster that impacted, many folks drastically. Why is Harvey so unique in the way that it impacted the state of Texas?
Well, first and foremost, Harvey was the first major hurricane to impact the United States since 2005. And the geographic landmass that it covered, over 41,000 square miles, bigger than the state of Virginia. It really had three events rolled into one. You had a major hurricane making landfall down on the coastal bend near Rockport, Texas. You had catastrophic flooding in major metro area of Houston, and then you had tropical storm force winds and major flooding in the Beaumont, Port Arthur area. So all of that combined in the different geographic areas created a significant challenge for the agency and for our state, local, private sector, and voluntary agencies to be able to work in such a broad geographic area.
Progress is viewed differently by each individual. I'm sure that I see progress in a different way than you might. And considering the current stage of recovery, what do you consider signs of progress thus far?
So first and foremost, I think the speed in which we made money available to disaster survivors. Over $12 billion has been made available to survivors in Texas from a variety of sources, from FEMA's individual assistance program, from the Small Business Administration and their low interest loans, and from the National Flood Insurance Program. And I think that is a huge success in the amount of time that we've been able to move that money. Now, are there still people that have needs? Absolutely. Will it ever be quick enough for individuals? Probably not. But I do think the speed in which money was put out on the street has been, in my 30 years in FEMA, probably the quickest I've ever seen it. We still have challenges with housing. We've got to look at how we rebuild infrastructure, how we do that more resilient so in the next event we don't experience these same kind of losses.
What would you say to those who claim they haven't seen any progress? Because I'm sure with each disaster there's people that claim they haven't seen anything happen at all.
Yeah, so obviously progress is in the eyes of the beholder, and as I said earlier, that 41,000 square miles is obviously from a smaller lens. It may not look as much as happened than what has happened in the overall landscape, but I think the amount of debris that's been moved, and we really look at that as a barometer, is you've got to get the debris off the streets in order to get the recovery going for people to rebuild. I think the speed in which that happened, how we saw local jurisdictions coming together with the state and the federal government to be able to make sure that we expedited financial assistance, that TxDOT got involved in helping them with moving debris, but I think that was a great sign to show how quickly we were moving debris and getting on to recovery. I think the housing mission we continue to look at. We've got to look at how we do mitigation, so we get mitigation dollars out that we can help communities make sure that we address these threats and hazards as they move forward. So I think those are the things we'll be looking at in the next phase as we continue that recovery. This is not going to be a short-term event. It's going to be a long-term event. FEMA, along with our state and local partners, are going to be here to the end.
Let's talk about partnerships. Strong partnerships, I believe, are essential. I'm sure you would agree. We've got local, state, and the federal government that are assisting in this recovery mission. For the first time in FEMA's history, the direct housing mission is locally managed and state-led. And how big of a change is that in comparison to past disasters?
Yeah, well, that's something I'm really excited about. I mean, this has the opportunity to change the way we do disaster housing in the future in this nation. So it is where it's locally led, state supported, and federally funded. And so, I think that we've got to continue to learn our lessons from that. The first time we've done this is not going to be perfect, but I do think at the end of the day, the local government knows best what's the solution that's going to work for their population. And I think we're trying in this event to be able to enable that so that the local governments can come up with solutions that best work for them, working through the state as a partner and the federal government as a partner. It's going to include the voluntary agencies and others as we look at how do we get people back to where they can get back to their damaged dwelling, because at the end of the day, that's really what we want to do, is where were they at before, so they know where their schools are, they're close to their jobs, they know where they shop for groceries, they're back to where they go to church. That is where we get them back to some sense of normalcy.
And so this, ultimately is going to help the survivor in the long run, because the local community is actually the one that's implementing the
Absolutely. Once again, we're enabling them to make decisions and coming up with solutions that work best for their community rather than one size fits all.
You often hear the term whole community within our walls, and for somebody that might be sitting at the table that works at the local grocery or the rec center, they might not understand what that term is. How would you speak to that?
Whole community involves everyone that's involved in a community. So that starts with the individual and the responsibility you have in preparedness, making sure that you're prepared for an event, so know what your threat and hazard is. So if you live along the coast, we are less than 145 days to the 2018 hurricane season. So what are you doing to prepare yourself? Have you taken a look at what your insurance policy covers? And for anyone out there who has not talked to their insurance agent in the last year, it is a great annual checkup, almost like going to the doctor, is talk to your insurance agent. What am I covered for? What am I not? We see so many people that say, I don't live in a special flood hazard area, still don't get flood insurance, but yet they flood. Just because you live in a special flood hazard area does not mean you shouldn't have flood insurance. But you should look at what the hazard and risk are. Take a look at what's happened in Texas and Louisiana over the past 2 years. A lot of people that didn't live in special flood hazard area were flooded, needed flooding. Then it extends out to your local government, your faith-based organizations, the voluntary organizations, private sector. How do they all help, not only in that preparedness, but readying for an event and then helping to respond and recover, and then the state and federal government and their support role in supporting those local governments help preparedness, respond, recover, and then mitigate.
Is there anything that you want to say to people that are going to watch this video? Anything that's been on your mind or you want them to remember?
Well, my thoughts and prayers are with every family that suffered loss, and that an event like this is a catastrophic event for anybody. And it's same if anything that involves your home, your livelihood, the things that you've worked so hard for so many years is gone. That's really hard to recover from. What I would say to you is FEMA, the local government, state government, voluntary agencies, we are here to provide that support to help you on your way back to recovery. And like I said earlier, it may not look like what it did before the storm, but we want to help with the resources that we can provide to be able to help you on that road to recovery. And we're going to be here for as long as it's needed. The other thing I would say is, I can't emphasize enough the preparedness, is we will be coming back into severe storm, severe spring flooding, and hurricane season. And those things will be upon us before we know it. So now is the time to think about, what's my situation? What do I need to do to be prepared? What does my insurance cover? Because now's the time to be thinking about that, not when the event occurs.
Mm-hmm. Build back in a way that if it were to happen again.
Absolutely. If you're building back, what are the things that you can do to make you more resilient for the next storm? We have a great workforce at FEMA. The men and women at FEMA are here to make sure that they help people recover and communities recover, and that's really where we'll be here to the end.